Hey, everybody. I don't know if I need, but I want a new chair arrangement. But yeah. Hey, we got one person in here. If you are able, please let me know how the audio is, so we can move on with the thing and not feel like we're wasting anybody's time with bad audio. Audio and video are good to go. Trevor, what's up, dude? How you doing? Good to see you in here tonight. I appreciate it. Gonna do a little coffee sipping. I got my Spotify data back, and I was looking through that, and it was pretty interesting. First of all, it's a little crazy how many people watch the podcast on Spotify on TV. Something I did not expect. Like 20% of people do that. How do I get more warning for your podcast other channel? Are you on Instagram? If you're on Instagram, that's a good way to do that, Trevor. Also, did you oh, you're not on Instagram. Are you on Facebook? Because if you're on Facebook, you can follow me on Facebook as well. Adam Makes Beer, Adam Mills. I'm not sure. No, again, good for you, by the way. Good for you. Are you a subscriber to the channel? If you are subscribed to the channel and you hit notifications, and you make sure that you hit the bell and all those things, I will always put up a note. Let me see. I will always ahead of time post, usually at least a few days ahead of time, the post of when the Q&A will be and when the other podcast, the Industry Pro podcast, will be. It is primarily what you can pretty much count on is the Q&A is the first week of the month, and then the Industry Pro I typically like to do like like the beginning of the third week or in the third week of the month. So every couple weeks I'm live streaming. That's kind of how I want to do that and how I kind of want to sort that out. But tip of the hat for you for doing that. But yeah, just generally. Yeah, you can also go to my YouTube page, and I believe there's like a community tab or posts tab, and you would be able to see that there too. So that would just be one thing to check up on. So yeah. All right. Welcome to all 8 of you in the chat right now. Tonight's show popped up as I was watching something else. I watched live or follow-up videos. Copy you for sure. Bondi, what's up, brother? I feel like, and listen, I'm loving every second of it, but I feel like you're always outdoing yourself with the handles that you apply to me. So Adsy Schnazzy Possum, audio sounding good. Appreciate it. Marco Cisneros. Finally, I'm able to watch a live stream after 8 months. Cheers to you, brother. Yeah, the YouTube page. Probably, yeah. Yeah, the YouTube page, man. Texas. I don't know if I've seen you in here before, brother. Emilio. Okay, yeah. Yeah, there's some options there, Tex. Um, I'm gonna run through the beginning of the show though. And then I want to get to that one real quickly. Let me see if I can do something to kind of I don't want to replace the pinned message. I nor do I want to put you in timeout. And I don't want you to be a moderator either. All right, we'll figure it out. Evening, Rich. Evening, Andrew. Tex is in the house. Trevor's in there. Marco, Paul. Good to see everybody. This is the 2023 December live stream Q&A. This is the Christmas edition. So, I mean, what makes it the Christmas edition? Quite frankly, nothing other than the fact that it's happening in December. I don't have a Santa hat on. My mom commented if you saw the thumbnail for this video that it's me with a child that's crying in Santa's lap, that my typical hack job Photoshop thing. And she reminded me how when I was a kid, when I was in kindergarten, Santa came in and we got to sit on his lap. I did not want to sit in this man's lap. Okay. I was insanely shy. Fun fact, and you probably could tell already, but I was held back when I was a kid because I was so shy. And that's what they tell me, but it definitely wasn't academic. But when I was a little kid, I wouldn't talk. So like at school, I wouldn't talk because I was super shy. And so I made my glasses worse there by cleaning them. So yeah, and when they brought Santa and they're like, oh, kids sit on Santa's lap. Yeah, I didn't want to, and I was so nervous, and I was chewing gum, and I was so nervous that my gum fell out of my mouth and got into Santa's beard. And so the picture that they have of me on Santa's lap is me like crying with a pink wad of gum in Santa's beard. Hold on just a second. I need to grab something to clean my glasses because this is out of control. Oh, man. Come on. All right, listen, the setup here is not like, I mean, you see the fire, you see the Blickman sign, you see the 130-year-old books, and you're like, this guy's got to figure it out. This guy knows what's going on. He doesn't. All right. So when I move, I trip over things. I am working on establishing my formal studio where I will be recording everything. I just need to get internet over there. So, but anyways, maybe we'll see. You got to so teaser. There's a few videos out there where I recorded from another scene. So yeah. Anyways, Tapmaster, good to see you. Long time subscriber, first time live stream. Love to see it. Love to see it. We will be getting to those questions, everybody that's dropping them in the chat. So just stay patient. But we have a few big things coming up on the channel. Adam Makes Beer is now a podcast. Check out Spotify, Apple Podcast, and see all of the long form brewer interviews we have done. After you subscribe, please leave a review and comment as well, because it really helps support the work I am doing. Also, if you are new to the channel or podcast, go to Adam Makes Beer on YouTube, click the playlist tab, and see tons of info, brew days, techniques, tutorials, now close to 520 videos posted on YouTube. As always, if you are getting value out of this content, please follow, rate, like, comment, ring the bell. A friend of mine has been telling me this for a while. Smash the like. He wants me to say smash the like. I've been resisting it, but smash that like button. Why not? Smash subscribe. Only 45% of people that watch my videos are subscribers. So if this is you, please hit that subscribe, because it does help me out. CT Homebrewing, what's good, man? So like, share, and all that good stuff with your brewing friends and craft beer enthusiasts. And if you have any means and feel as if my content has benefited you, consider a channel membership for $2.99 a month. This gives you priority for Q&A live streams like today's event. Or dropping me a super chat tip in the comments or chat. December's Industry Pro live stream will be December 15th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with guest Steve Hendo Henderson of Rockstar Brewer Academy. Stay tuned for more details. I'm very excited. Steve Hendo and I have we jumped on a call, a Zoom call a few months back. He was one of the first guys that I'd seen doing some pro side content on YouTube. And it was definitely like, hey, I want to get in and start doing some of that too. So I know he does a ton of consultation work. There's a lot of great things that we're going to talk about. So yeah, definitely you're not going to want to miss that one. He's going to be day drinking because I think he's 15 hours ahead of me. But anyways, speaking of the Industry Pro podcast, I've got, and listen, I'm excited because in 2024, I'm working on rounding out that schedule. And I can tell you that I have confirmed that I will be speaking to Mitch Steele of New Realm Brewing, formerly of Stone, formerly of Anheuser-Busch. I will also be speaking to Julian Trago of Beechwood Brewing and Barbecue, and the one and only John Palmer coming up for our Industry Pro lineup, and with more to come. So if you are not familiar with any of those folks, you should be, because we're talking about really bedrock people for home brewing, and then guys that are absolutely just killing it out there on the pro side. Julian has tons of great information out there today. I was just reading an article that he had published in the Technical Quarterly for the Master Brewers Association on barrel handling. We'll be talking about that a little bit today. So you are not going to want to miss those as well. And I keep saying this, I'm leaving it in here, but I'm angling very hard on starting to put together this recipe tutorial course. And then there's going to be more videos that follow it. I'm going to be doing a little bit of a sneak peek, and this is not going to be like the full thing, but we are going to have a question today where we jump into a beer style. And this will just be like a Cliff Notes version of what I'm going to be doing. But the main masterclass that we're going to be offering, it's going to be the first paywalled stuff that I do. There will still be a free video released every day on YouTube, as you are accustomed to. But there is going to be some new premium content available as well. And the first thing that we are going to have is a recipe creation course, and it is meant for somebody that has made beer before, probably at least has an understanding of all grain brewing, and has the ability to use a recipe calculator. And if you have those things, I think we can have, I think I'm putting together a really exciting course for understanding the nuts and bolts of how to construct recipes and how I accomplish that. I'm also going to be doing specific styles. And rather than just saying, oh, well, this is how I brew this beer, I will be saying that. But I'm going to start giving you like some ranges and some ideas. The big picture here is that if you want to make the beer I'm making, that's great. Or the beer how I would make it, that's great. But I want to give you the opportunity to understand how I think about beer. And actually, it's the whole like, well, that analogy doesn't work at all. I was going to say, give a man a fish and he eats for a day, teach him how to fish and he'll fish forever. Wait, eat forever, something like that. That analogy might not work, but I just don't want to like hand feed you my recipes, and that's great. And like some of my recipes are out there, and that's awesome. But I want you to be able to actually learn how to go through that process yourself, right? And develop those skills. That'll be the point of that course. Um, and then these ancillary style courses as well, that would follow after that. Pardon me, my cough is better than last time, but it is hanging around a little bit. But yeah. But that is my goal. I would like to, in December, maybe January, start recording some of that stuff and getting it chopped up, and some of that premium content ready for you. So, anyways, that's kind of the big picture there. And before we get to today's December 2023 Christmas live stream questions, Blickman Engineering has been the pioneer of nano brewing, and they have helped hundreds of successful breweries achieve their dreams since they started with one barrel systems in 2006. Now offering a full suite of brew houses up to 15 barrel skidded and insulated, matching cellaring equipment, keg washers, grain mills, and more, sized specifically for the nano brewer. Blickman Pro Brewing systems are competitively priced without sacrificing quality, and the simple design and factory direct support from our brewing experts get you up and running faster than anything else on the market. When you're ready to go pro or just kicking the tires, be sure to reach out to them for did I skip something? When you're ready to go pro or just kicking the tires, be sure to reach out to them for expert advice and a partner to help you through it all. Turn your dreams into a reality by reaching out to Phil, Tom, or Josh at ProSeries@BlickmanEngineering.com. Again, that's ProSeries@BlickmanEngineering.com. Blickman Engineering Pro Brewing is proud to be the equipment sponsor for this channel and is committed to helping every brewer, no matter where they are in their journey. Yeah, Adam, as a kid, man, it's no joke. Yeah, let's see here. We got a few questions. I mean, we have some questions pouring in. Bill Nova, good to see you. CT, good to see you as well, man. All right, let's start rolling. Let's start rolling through some of these. I'm going to pull some out of the chat immediately. Those of you who have put questions into the comments, send them to me on Instagram. Those are all on the list. You don't need to ask again. I have those already on here. So we'll get rolling here. Texas asks the question. Newly opened 7-barrel question. They have a newly opened 7-barrel brewery. They overcarved an entire batch and they are scrambling to remedy it as to be able to pour more than foam. So yeah, the idea is a lot of times I'm assuming your other beers are pouring well. And the reason I'm saying that is I'm talking about, let's just make sure that there's not a draft line issue, right? But you probably know that the beer's overcarved. I'm not trying to be sassy or anything like that, but when you are pouring just foam, there can be issues on the tap system side as well. And I'm not saying you didn't think about that. I'm just trying to help people that are listening kind of plug in all the things that can be issues, right? To kind of form that thinking on that. So draft system aside, if everything is good there, you have a beer in the tank, and probably most systems prefer to be pouring around 2.6 on the higher end, and some maybe a little bit higher. So let's say you got that thing carved up to 3 or 3.1 or 3.3, and you've got all this gas in the beer, and you do not have the ability to pour that beer through your draft lines because it is not balanced appropriately, it is not carved appropriately in order to serve that beer. The first thing that I would say is assuming that you have a decent amount of headspace in your bright tank. I'm assuming you're in a bright tank, And also, if you have the ability to, um, hopefully the beer is clear, filtered, and or otherwise, and you have an ability to like blow some gas in the side. What I would say is, um, and this might sound like a little counterintuitive, um, that beer is going to want to hold gas in solution when it's really cold. Okay. But you also don't necessarily just want to be warming up beer either. So what I would recommend is you want to be you want to be forcing the CO2 that is in solution in the beer into the headspace of the tank. Okay. So this is why I'm going to recommend blowing down the CIP arm or vent arm or whatever is coming down to blow that head pressure off the tank. If you have a carb stone in that tank or a side port, hopefully you have like a, I don't know, carb stone side port or something like that. Start blasting some gas through there at a relatively high rate. You will be putting head pressure back into the tank, but maybe you can kind of rouse it and force some gas out and continue to blow the tank down. I would make sure I'd be closing the handle in the meantime. This is non-ideal. Ideally, what you would be doing is you could drop the head pressure off the beer and then just let the CO2 that is in solution naturally reach equilibrium with the headspace. And you can kind of do that until that beer has reached an appropriate carbonation level. But maybe if you can blast some CO2 and kind of force some rousing in that tank and push some CO2 out of solution with turbulence and continuing to blow down that head pressure, that would be one way that I would look at doing that. So look into blowing down that head pressure first and foremost. And then maybe trying to rouse the tank, agitate some gas out of solution with high intensity pushes through a carb stone or through a side port. So that would be my suggestion on that Tex. I hope that works out for you, man. Yeah. So Andrew, do commercial breweries use rice hulls to deal with those sticky wheat and rye mashes, or do the latter runs not really have those issues? Yeah, man. I mean, I definitely know folks on the pro side using that. We do not at you know, how do I want to say that? I've worked at places that use them and places that don't. I think when you are looking at high levels of wheat, high levels of oats, rye is super viscous. Yeah, you can look at using rice hulls, and rice hulls is essentially just like adding grain husk to your mash, right? That that husk, is meant to help in the louder ability or the flow through the ability to flow liquid through that mash bed, whether that be wort, sparge water, dilute wort, however you want to look at it. And so that's why people will do that when you're talking about rye, um, uh, different adjuncts, um, oats, and even sometimes just in really high gravity dense beers, wheat as well. Those things don't have husk, and so you can add some of these, rice hulls. I think some people sometimes even use like oat hulls. Maybe I've seen that. Maybe I haven't. Maybe I'm losing my mind. But rice hulls is pretty universal there. They can definitely help, and so you can check those out. I've run wheat beer, Hefeweizen in the past. Years ago, I was brewing it at a place, and it was a 7-barrel place. And dude, there was so much wheat in there. There wasn't a way you weren't going to stick that mash. So, but we just didn't use them. We just kind of would cut the bed up with our mash paddle. So, anyways, yeah, that's the deal. But no, they are definitely used, Andrew. So appreciate your question. Let's see. New to the chat. It is good to kick it with you too, CT Homebrew. Marco, suggestions using cannabis and beer. No, not to be super short with it. Cannabis is not something that I'm really experienced with, and I know there's legality around it. I will give like the brief, and this is probably antiquated now because there's so many it seems like so many fractions of cannabis that people are working with now. Back in the day when people used to talk about, just actually throwing, plant matter into your fermenter or whatnot. The late great Mike McDowell would always say, you know, uh, don't waste good weed with good beer and make bad beer, right? And just kind of waste them both. He would always say to enjoy them separately. However, with the work that they can do now with different fractions and stuff like that, again, not like super familiar with that stuff, but you're going to see a lot of things happening. We are seeing that that cannabis space start to expand with legalization for recreational in many states. And then we're also seeing what's going to be happening on the beverage front as well, because that's going to be interesting. I just don't have enough background to be able to speak intelligently about it. Andrew, dude, if you would love the chorus, that'd be great. That would be awesome. That would be awesome. Yeah, they're not super cheap, but I do know of spots using them. But then again, I mean, like, I don't know. I don't think I mean, like, there's not tons of places doing half, and even when people make American wheat beer, I feel like they, try to trim it back maybe a little less wheat than 50% or something like that to make it a little easier. You know, I mean, I don't think as far as the louder ton thing, yeah, I mean, it could help in the louder ton with that for sure, for sure. What will that do with the pH with rice hulls? That's a good question. I'm not certain. I'm not certain. And I mean, the way I think about it is I just treat it as the same idea of you're just replacing barley hulls, right? But barley husk, and maybe I'm thinking about it wrong. But that's the same way that I think about that. But next question is from Camino Mas Largo Brewing on Instagram. I'm trying to get a sense of what young beer smells like and what beer exposed to oxygen smells like. People say wet cardboard, but I've actually soaked some cardboard in water and couldn't smell anything. Good for you, man. That's awesome. What's out there that I could smell and say, okay, that's oxygen exposure? Well, first of all, what I would say, El Camino, man, just in time in the chat, just jumping in to say thanks for answering your question. But hey, I'm answering it right now. I'm literally answering it right now. As far as young beer goes, man, I think one of the best benefits of working in a professional brewery is the volume of raw material that you're exposed to. You're exposed to tons of hops, tons of grain, all the different smells, and the intensity of it, right? Um, I would I think the main thing to understand when people talk about young beer or green beer, taste your beer all the way throughout the process. All right. And then you're going to start to really develop. First of all, you're going to be able to see where your beer is going. Right. So you'll be able to get that knowledge of being like, okay, I'm halfway through attenuation. I'm tasting this here. Well, I can tell it's probably going here. Right. So really the best thing you can do is really actively taste through fermentation. And I think sometimes when people are talking about a beer tasting a little bit young, it could be anything from like a lack of smoothness, maybe a harshness. Sometimes when a beer is not completely clear, that yeast in it, strain dependent and whatnot, will carry flavor and aroma, I'd find that typically a lot of yeast strains, especially on the ale side, are a little will actually increase the impression of fruitiness both in the aroma and taste. Now, however, because those yeast cells are in there, they're typically on some level coated with hop oil. And so I think it usually will make them taste a little bit harsher at that point, too. So that can be a little rougher, a little harsher, maybe not as sweet as it will taste in the finish. The rough edges will come off it once a beer is fully mature. I think those are good ways to look at it when working through young beer. You could be talking about things like, when people actually say green beer, like, acetaldehyde, green apple, making sure diacetyl's cleaned up, butter, movie theater butter. Those things could be, imply a younger beer, but yeah, I think that's kind of it in a nutshell. And then as far as getting to understand oxidized beer, so I'm giving you a few different options here. If you're packaging your beer, leave some bottles and cans unpurged prior to filling. Leave them out at room temperature, and then give yourself some time, and then do a side by side with the other appropriately packaged beer. That's one way. Another way is if you have some beers in the house and you have two of them, all right, and they're pry top, all right. I know bottles aren't as hot as they used to be or anything like that, but if you have two bottles side by side that are the same, and lighter flavored, the better. Might be easier. Go ahead and open one up, pour a little out, and then recap it. If you have like a homebrew capper, recap it. Make sure that it's a pry top and not a twist top, and then leave that out warm for a week, couple weeks, something like that. Maybe do a few of them and then taste them out 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever. Do it with cheaper beer. It's science. But that would be a way of what you would be doing is you would be creating more space in the bottle, decanting, so you're having atmosphere pull into the bottle as you're pouring, and then recap that and just let it oxidize on its own. Now we're going to get into a little bit of a question of temperature. And I mentioned storing it at room temperature because the warmer things are, the faster they will oxidize. And also, it was I remember listening one time. I forget who the person was that was speaking, but they were talking about putting a packaged beer at variable temperature. So raise it up to 90 F and then throw it in the fridge, and then raise it up to 90 F and then throw it in the fridge. Right. So temperature change can also help facilitate that process as well. So can you tell me how to make actually, let me just finish up that question real quick first. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the big idea behind that. Either package some of your own beer without purging. I think that's the best way. Or actually open some packages and reseal them after pouring some out. Maybe that might help. So yeah, go ahead and see how that works for you. I'd be interested. I think it'll get you pretty well on your way. Appreciate the question. CT Homebrewing asks, when making a lager starter, do you stir it cold or room temp? Also decant versus pitching the full starter volume into the wort? What I would do is, and what I've done in the past, I would try to keep that. Since you are growing up, you can. I've grown lager starters at a warmer than fermentation temperature, not ripping. I do try to do it in a cooler portion of my house. Those starters usually need to be pretty big, and so I think for me, when I was brewing at home, I didn't want to put anything more than 2 liters into a 5 gallon batch, because you're essentially kind of putting some oxidized wort in there, especially if you have it on a stir plate or something like that. Maybe that's just me. That was something that would have been a concern for me. So a lot of times what I would do is I would make that starter, um, cool it down over a course of a couple days, and then decant. And then what I would do is I would go a little bit wild and kind of day of, when I had my mash going or something like that, I would make up another small, like, little liter of starter wort, cool it down to, like, in the 50s, and then add that to my Erlenmeyer flask of with the yeast, with the where the wort had been decanted off, and then I would kind of let that sit as we moved through the brew day, so to give that yeast a little bit of a chance to perk up again, but at a cooler temp. But that's how I used to do that back in the day. So appreciate the question. Here's the deal. I'm going to say right now that he's not here in the flesh, but he is here in spirit. My man Dixon is in the chat, and he wants me to tell him how to make a Corona clone at home. Dix, I might end up doing who knows, I might end up doing one of my recipe things on that. But big picture, what we're looking at is you're probably looking for at least a 30% adjunct beer. American two-row, 30% rice or corn, and or a blend of those, maybe 8 to 10 IBU in it. Get it nice and dry and ferment it with there's a flat out Mexican lager strain out there, so that's what I would run that with. But appreciate the question, Dixon. Next question comes from Brian David Peterson on Instagram. Hey, I have a question for you on oak barrels. What is your process when you get in a used oak barrel for cleaning and sanitizing, and what chemicals do you use? Also, do you use the same process after you get done aging a beer and you want to fill it back up with another style? Thanks. Keep up the great work you do. So I would say this. Yes, I laughed at your last name, Dixon. Yes. Yes, I did. Andrew, I believe, yes. And I think, yes. There's someone missing from the chat. Those of you that are regular in there, and I think you might know who it is. But how I would approach this as far as barrels go, barrels come into the brewery. Again, we're always trying to get freshly emptied wet barrels, only the wettest. And upon receiving, we want to give them a little exterior evaluation for leaks, breakage, loose staves, other imperfections, other trouble spots to be looking at. And you also want to see if any staves are, did I mention loose staves? That's definitely part of it. You don't want a dry barrel. When you have a dry barrel, those staves shrink, and you're going to get a lot of leaking out of those barrels. Maybe it will never seal itself. Maybe it will never hydrate itself. So you want to get those delicious wet bourbon barrels. Beyond that, I would remove the bung, smell, and give the old visual inspection. Usually look in to see how much booze is in there. You usually want to look in and see a little puddle at the very least. You at least want to have, you also want to have a nice, strong aroma of spirit and barrel coming out of that. You want it to be pleasant. If it smells weird, obviously that's going to be an issue. Just little things like that. Typically, the cheap way that I've done that in the past, getting those hard bungs out, because you're going to have a wooden bung there. I will put a screw into that bung and then crowbar or whatever and pop it out. I did see that amazing hammer, though, that we have at Sonder, which is awesome. You need to go to my Instagram. If you Adam Makes Beer on Instagram, just to check out this bung removing hammer that I was using. It's in a reel that I made from a few weeks back. It's awesome. and it's all barrel work. So I have like one of the little soft bungs like foaming over and stuff. You can tell, but you want to see that hammer. Go and check that out. So, anyways, remove that bung, smell, visual inspection, and then really we're ready with our bulldog apparatus, the kind of the universal term we end up using for essentially a large barrel racking cane. A lot of times we have smaller racking canes on the home side, but this is something that will fit directly into the barrel, go all the way down to the bottom. It'll have a sliding rubber bung on it that will allow you to seal. You can put beer into it. You can also push gas into it to force the beer out of it. So you can use it for both transfer into and out of barrels. They're great, and they're really effective. So we have our bulldog all cleaned and sanitized and ready to roll, and then we're putting beer into those things. So there's really no cleaning or anything that we're doing. We're making sure they don't smell funky, that they're wet and boozy, and we're ready to roll. Okay. That's the whole idea. Still treat this as trying to be as sanitary as possible, right? I like to spray the bung with alcohol before we pull it. When you're filling, I tend to keep like a piece of tinfoil that's seen some sanitizer and kind of tucked around that. I tend to purge gas into it as we go. Oh, I don't know if I mentioned that. You pull the bung, everything checks out inspection wise. Purge that barrel with CO2 because oxygen is still a thing, even though we will be receiving micro oxidation throughout the course of the barrel aging. You just don't want to be throwing that beer into a barrel full of O2. So please purge it out, get that beer into said barrel, and then they have little awesome soft rubber bungs that go in. Some have a pressure release on them. Those are slick. And then they also have solid rubber bungs that you can put in. So the reason that you want the pressure relief one is mostly a pretty common practice is to put those beers in cold into the barrels, and there's going to be some expansion. Then after as that beer warms up, it's going to expand, and so it'll give that beer somewhere to go. So yeah, but anyways, that's really it. And then lay them down and age for as long as you want until that beer tastes exactly how you want it to. And then you can reverse that process by taking the clean and sanitized bulldog, putting it into the barrel, placing a small amount of head pressure on it, and pushing it up and out of those barrels into a tank. So yeah, that's how I mention. Well, that's how I deal with that stuff. Not mention. That's how I deal with that stuff. So yeah, and if you want to put another beer on and after it, you would just go right back into it. You would make sure it's purged and fill. I will say this, that if you're aging it in a barrel for a year, it might be I don't know how much is left in there for you. You might get some more character, but it's going to take longer, and it might not be the depth of character that you expected to get. So just some things to think about. Brian, I hope that helped, man. Appreciate your question. Next question is from Razor. I met Razor at the Ohio Craft Brews Conference. Hey, if anybody's going to the Ohio Craft Brews Conference, let me know. Please say hi. Like, if you don't want to say hi to me, if you're going to be going to this conference, last year when I was doing this, I'm like, I'm not going to see anybody I know or anything like that, or anybody that knows that I'm doing this stuff. I had so many people say kind things. It was very cool. Razor was one of the guys that I chatted with. Please say hi and just say, hey, whatever. I listen, and then I'm going to be really excited that you do, and then we'll high five and stuff, and we'll talk about beer. All right. So if you are going to the Ohio conference, I'm going to be speaking again this year, and I'm actually going to be talking about content creation in the brewing world. So Yeah, not so much of a brewing topic, but it will be a little bit kind of behind the scenes of how I do things here and have done things here, and a little bit of I don't know, a little bit of career, um, big picture stuff too. So yeah. Razor on Instagram. Hey Adam, I have a couple of questions for the live stream. What do you think the craft beer scene slash industry will look like in 5 to 10 years? What beer will be available, and what beers do you expect from the tap room? Will the number of breweries continue growing, or will we see a decline in beer and breweries? I'll touch on a few things that this is obviously all speculation, right? But I've had some conversations recently with friends in the industry, and they're nervous and things like that. I mean, you do see breweries closing, downsizing, and I think the reality is the the craft beer era was not going to stay, screaming straight up forever, right? Now, that said, there appears to be some data that suggests that younger drinkers are not drinking at the same rate or different beverages than what today's typical craft beer consumer does, or they drink differently. And but at the same time, people that are drinking craft beer just don't disappear, right? I think we are looking at I think the industry has already plateaued. um I think the days of I spoke to Cole Hackbarth of Rheingeist a handful of months ago, and I think to say, okay, well, we're gonna start off as a pub, and then in 3 years we're gonna be a regional brewery. I think those days are over. I do think there's plenty of room, and Bart Watson, if I'm understanding him correctly, Bart Watson is the chief economist for the Brewers Association. He's been saying for years that there's room for pubs. There's room for neighborhood bars, essentially, right? That make their own beers. There's room in that space, and I think that's very true. Um, it's going to be. I think it's going to be tough for a little bit. You know, I think that there's ebbs and flows with everything. Um, I do know that, I think one other take is, because what are the things that are coming for craft beer right now? One, people just not drinking anymore. Seltzer, cider, RTDs, flavored malt beverages, cocktails in a can, all these different things. Um, those things, those things come and go. What I do know is this. I do know that new drinkers don't want to be drinking what their parents are drinking, right? Or what the group before them was drinking on some level, you know. And so, I'm not sure. Right now you see a lot of hazies, a lot of fruit beers, and you start to see lagers popping off a bit more too. But that's really what the market is. And, you know, I think we're gonna I don't know. It's hard to say exactly what that thing would be. If I knew exactly what that thing would be, eventually I'd be a very rich man. I don't know what that thing is. What I do think the key is some of the businesses, and I'm not trying to say, and I'm couching this, and I don't want to be sound harsh when I say this. Sometimes businesses close because their business plan wasn't good, or they weren't good at running the business, or there were other extenuating circumstances, right? Sometimes the businesses that fail aren't good at that business. I would say I think that there is plenty of room for people that are very skilled at running breweries, at running a restaurant slash brewery, right? But that's a very difficult thing. That's a very difficult thing. You've heard me say it before that great beer is not a business plan, and it's not. If your plan is to make great beer and you think that's what's going to carry you through, there's places making great beer that are closing up all the time. It's not a business plan. Okay. So I mean, I think the places that are going to survive are the places that have either already figured it out or are figuring it out on the financial side, on the business side, on the operations side. So, anyhow, Razor, I hope you are going to Toledo to the Ohio Craft Brewers Conference. If you do, please flag me down and anybody else that's happening to be listening as well. That'd be a lot of fun. I'll talk to you later, Razor. Thanks, man. Next question comes from Pitt on Instagram. Hi, Adam. I just recently found your YouTube channel, which is awesome, by the way. Thank you. Keep up the great work. It would be great if you can show or tell how oxidation can be avoided when it comes to bottling. Many thanks. Cheers, Pitt. And then he says, I'm running a teeny tiny brewery called Pibes beside my regular job on an advanced home brewer level. So that is more of interest to me, but it would be nice to know how pros are handling this as well. Thanks and greetings from Germany. Here's your big key. When you're talking about how to avoid oxidation in your finished beer. So step one is to not have oxidation in the first place. Do not have an oxidized beer in the first place going into the can. Or bottle. This is what a lot of people mess up in the first place. Is they're like, okay, well, I'm getting this DO reading here and this here, and all our numbers are really good in spec. But if that beer going into the filler is already oxidized, you're not hitting you're not solving your issue, or you're not discovering if there's an issue, right? So I think the big key is making sure that you have low dissolved oxygen processes in the first place. All right. Both on from hot side all the way through to cold side and fermentation, right? Make sure that you're purging your tanks well, that you're transferring beers gently, different things like that. As far as that goes, when it comes to your filler, you are going to want to make sure that you are purging with CO2, that you are sealing that container, whether it be a can or a bottle, that you are sealing that on foam. I would also caution you against using oxidizing sanitizers. If you're not certain if your sanitizer that you're using in your process is oxidizing, look on your label and it'll probably say, might have a sticker that says oxidizer on it. So yeah. And I would also, afterwards, I would keep your packaged beer cold as much and as long as you can, because keeping something cold will help to slow down that process of oxidation. Because no matter how good we are, there is going to be oxygen pickup when we do things. And so we want that process to happen as slowly as possible. So those are kind of be my big key takeaways, Pitt, on how to prevent that from happening to your beer. Thanks so much for the question. I talk so much when I do this. I get so thirsty. I've been talking now for roughly 55 minutes straight, and it makes me thirsty. These pretzels are making me thirsty. Who else? Yeah, Dixon was totally making a joke, dude. That's September and June. Let's be real. I think it's September and June. CTM Brewing. CT also suggests when it comes to barrel handling, sometimes you just got to give a good visual inspection and smell that bung too before you have a go of it. So that's savvy stuff. Savvy. Andrew. Yeah, dude. So this little heart shows up here, and I don't know why. I don't want it to. Andrew says, I have noticed that the brew pubs in my area that are doing the best have great community engagement. Bingo. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not saying that's everything, but it's a big part of it. Understanding what your community is, engaging with them well, forming a connection with people through your people, through the people that work for you, right? And then know how to run that business. My coffee is delicious. I don't know how much I want to be drinking because I do have to sleep after I do this. But anyways, next question comes from John Monk on Instagram. Adam, just catching up on your podcasts. Awesome and really useful. Thank you. 2 questions for you. Question 1, what do you use to clean your brewery floors? Mine is epoxy. 2, I have chillers for my fermenters. 500 liter, but no heating function on them with colder winter temps. How would you recommend maintaining temps in the brewery? I don't have a temp controlled environment. I have been thinking about repurposing a 1-barrel Bright as an HLT or hot liquor tank and manually changing over hoses for fermenting and then changing back for crashing. Thoughts, advice? By cold, I mean that my temps drop to between 4 and 15 degrees Celsius. Yeah, that's pretty cold though, man. But enough to potentially cause problems. Absolutely. So we have a 2-parter here for old John Monk. First of all, what do you do to clean your brewery floors? We will do a couple of things. The primary thing that we do these days in the old Sonder Brewing is every day all work surfaces, floors will get hit with bleach, and sometimes a foaming agent added to it. A light scrub will be applied, and then that will be rinsed down the drain. There is also a foaming chlorinated cleaner that we sometimes use on floors. But yeah, I've got bleach stains in my clothes now for the first time in my life. It's the first time that I've used bleach as something that goes on the floor, but that's what I'm using right now. A foaming chlorinated cleaner from my brewery chemical rep, and straight up bleach, man, blasting it on there with a little foamer added to it, and then scrub up and rinse down. So that's what we're doing. As far as your chiller situation, man, that's challenging. Sometimes when we think about an HVAC system or your cooling system for your glycol system for a brewery, a lot of times we're thinking about trying to take temperature down on a beer or cap it at a certain point. But I don't think I know anybody that, or too many people at least, off the top of my head, I don't know anybody that has the ability to also heat fermenters as well on the pro side. I think that's a sticking point. When I was at Cartridge, we were in that beautiful building. The Peters Cartridge factory is absolutely beautiful. Cartridge is beautiful. Go in there and see your boy, Big Josh Halper, and tons of windows in there. And during the summer, it's bright and beautiful and hot. And during the winter, man, it gets cold. We do have some heating units in there, but you have to run them really high, like in order to because what you're running into is a situation where your ambient temperature is actually dragging down your fermentation temperature. That is not a good thing. If you want a beer fermenting at 68 degrees and ambient is tearing it down to 62, you can have a host of things go wrong, right? You can have that yeast get sluggish, not want to finish that ferment out. They just want to flock up and go to sleep down in the bottom of the tank. It can be an issue when things like that happen. You can have fermentation byproducts left in the beer, whether that be green apple acetaldehyde, butter, diacetyl, right? You can have those things in there. Um, and then the sluggish fermentation stuff, right? You don't want that. As far as being able to hook up something to heat the tank, first of all, it sounds like a lot of work. Um, and I mean, maybe you can make it work. I'll say this: I'm not the guy to be doing that because I don't have the. I'm not like the do it yourself re-rig a tank type guy and everything like that. But I mean, you could try it, dude. I mean, especially since you don't have any ability to heat that room otherwise, because my primary advice would be is to try to raise the ambient temperature of that room, right? Whether there be some heaters or whatever. Um, and Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one. That's a tough one. Obviously, you want to be able to upgrade that situation, but yeah, I'm not certain how sustainable that is, what that changeover looks like. Um, and yeah, maybe you can get by through some cold winter months doing something like that. But it's definitely outside the box thinking, brother. So let me know how that goes. I know I didn't have a ton for you on it, but I would love to know, John, what you end up doing, and if there's if you're able to find a good solution to that. So appreciate your question. Where can I get that awesome Adam mug? Rich, listen, dude. Listen. I only use the do you realize I only use this mug like twice a month. This is when this is when I use it. I drink out of my right hand with it because if I hold it like this, it's me looking at me. We'll see, baby. I mean, you never know. And you do know the other side does say Brew Daddy. So, it's the Brew Daddy Adam mug. Maybe coming to a merch store near you. What else? Thoughts on Patrick Sandy. Welcome, first of all. Welcome, Patrick. Thoughts on pitching a high gravity wort into a yeast onto a yeast cake instead of making a starter. I think that harvesting yeast from a prior fermentation is a great way to go. And if if you're just talking about like leaving it in a fermenter, though, whether it's leaving it in the bottom of carboy or whatever, if you could actually have a relatively sanitary way or as sanitary as you can make it way to harvest that, that would be great. Um, and I think that would be good. It would be nice to be able to separate it from like all the trube and everything like that, all your protein, all your break, and then kind of separate off some of that dead dying yeast. That might be nice. I've done that at home. What I did was I made I was growing up something for a Bach, and I think it was like an Eisbach or something like that. And so I needed a big lager pitch, and so I made Helles, and but I made sure I didn't get any true break material into the fermenter, right? And it was really, really clean. And then I did rack out of that and then rack the Doppelbock back into the same fermenter. That might be a little wild. That was something I did on the home side. But that Eisbach turned out really nice. That Doppelbock turned out really nice because it's a Doppelbock first. But it's one way to do it. So yeah, I think you can do that. Just try to be really clean going in on it because you don't want all the dead yeast. So you want to have really healthy yeast for your initial beer that you're fermenting with. So, make sure you have a good starter, make sure it was a good ferment, everything like that. Next question comes from Ryan Bowen on Instagram. Another question. We are seeing a steady pH drop during fermentation, and towards the end, it starts to rise back up. any ideas, I will have to send you a swag package for answering all these questions. Well, listen, being a father of as many kids as I am, I take all swag, whether it be hats, shirts, pantaloons, stickers, whatever. All right. There's something I can do with it. If I can't wear it or something like that, someone in this house will. All right. So I accept all swag. Send it to Sonder Brewing, care of Adam Mills. These days, I'm probably between a large and an extra large because I do have a little bit of my fall. This is December though. This is the winter now. There's a fullness about my being when the weather turns. You know, when there's less sunlight, a little colder. There's a fullness to my person these times of year. So, you know, but generally I'm wearing like a large t-shirt, large hoodie. I mean, if they run a little small, bump it up. But I mean, hey, I'm not turning down swag, baby. So Ryan, I should probably answer your question now. So yeah, you are going to see a steady drop in pH throughout fermentation. You're actually going to see your pH probably drop faster than your gravity. So, like for instance, if you're going into the fermenter, you know, at a pH of 5 or 5.1 or something like that, and the beer finishes out at 4.4, 4.3, it's going to get there faster than your gravity. Your pH is going to go terminal before your gravity will. Okay. And if you actually think about it, it's probably like an evolutionary thing, right? Because you are going to be that yeast is making that wort more acidic to help ward off things that cannot take a more acidic environment. And so it's kind of a way to you know, compete against or outcompete other interlopers to that fermentation, right? So that is why you're going to see that pH drop, and it happens right at the beginning of fermentation. And then what you're going to see is it'll go down, and then once you start getting toward terminal gravity, it will start ticking back up. My understanding with that is that it can be more aggressive with poor yeast health. But either way, when you have yeast in the cone of that fermenter or in the bottom of your fermenter, whatever shape it is, and it's just sitting there hanging out at the bottom, it's my understanding that some yeast at that stage, whether it be old, tired, dead cells, what have you, helping to raise the pH of that wort a little bit, but that's super, super normal. All right. That's a super, super normal thing. So it should be a good indicator to you that if your gravity is stable for a couple days, it's time to get those beers crashed and get the yeast off them. Right. So yeah, that's kind of the idea, Ryan. I would start tracking it like that. And good on you for tracking your numbers and keeping your ear to the ground on it, because those are some great ways to build quality in the brew house. Patrick Sandy says, thank you. Well, you're welcome. Winter weight is acceptable. Is that in Ohio? It's blocked by a heart right now. Is acceptable for Ohio. Yeah, well, it was accepted. Sure as hell was acceptable for Michigan too, man, because I just get a little bit more robust, you know, a little bit fuller. Next question is from Bill Cooper. We have some pH questions coming. Bill Cooper, is Bill Cooper the guy that that stole a whole bunch of money and then took a plane, lives in the Pacific Northwest, then jumped out of the plane and disappeared into the forest, and he's still on the loose? Or is that DB Cooper? Or is DB Cooper somebody from Mad Men? DB Cooper. It is DB Cooper, baby. And do you know what DB stands for? It stands for Dat Boy. Is that boy Cooper. Anyways, don't get me started. Bill Cooper on Instagram. Hey, Adam, I have a issue that seems to be with all my brews. Today I brewed a Czech Pils with a total of 6 ounces of hops, Saaz hops, in a 5-gallon batch. That is the equivalent of roughly 2.3 pounds of hops in 1 barrel. Okay, that'll be we're going to use that as we go. Mash pH 5.3, sparge pH 5.48, pre-boil 5.36, end of boil 5.48 exclamation points. I'm gonna have to come back to that. It happens almost every brew where my post-boil pH is a lot higher than my pre-boil. I have calibrated my Milwaukee meter before brew day and even redid it post-boil measurement. Why is my pH not dropping during boil? He's talking about brewing on the homebrew side. I usually ask just because it's a scale thing, but he did say 5-gallon batch earlier, so I just wasn't listening. This particular beer is at day 11 of fermentation and final gravity has been reached. pH is at 4.51, which is great. No dry hop. Dual calibrated Milwaukee MW 102 meter calibrated before every brew day. Thank you very much. Just kegged a West Coast IPA that finished at 4.4. So great. Yeah, sometimes I ask for additional notes. So here's the deal. First of all, your beer's coming out good. End of the day, your beer is good. Your final pH numbers, which are important, are in the right range. You're in the food safety range. You're maybe, you're probably within plus or minus, 100 there on something. But, 4 or 5 is kind of where we want to be for food safety, 4 or 5 and under. So, all that stuff is good, but there's a strange thing happening where, everything your pre-boil is 5.36. You would probably expect that to go down to 5.15, or 5.2, 5.25, something like that. But it's higher at the end of the boil. So let's speculate on this a little bit, ladies and gentlemen. I know that when I dry hop a beer, if I dry hop a beer at a pound per barrel, that I can expect to raise the pH of that beer by 1/10. Okay. So when I was looking at that Saaz hop edition, the 6 ounces and the 5 gallons, I'm like, I need to size that all up to barrels because that's basically how my brain thinks in beer right now. And then when I saw that it was almost 2.5, closer to 2.5 pounds per barrel than not, that got me thinking. All right. So, let's just say for argument's sake that you got your 10th point drop. You actually got it. You probably got it in your pre-boil. Pardon me. You probably got that in your boil. So if you had not hopped that beer, your pH may have gone from like 5.36 down to like 5.26, right? Maybe 5.2. But you added almost 2.5 pounds of hops. And we know that on the dry hopping side, when you add for every roughly pound that you add of hops, you're going to get that 10th increase. Maybe that's what's pushing that pH number back up again, right? So first of all, if you're concerned, first of all, if you enjoy the beer, keep doing what you're doing. Second of all, if you want to try to test this out, think about it. Do this on a beer where there is really just a very small a really small bittering addition. You use something really high alpha acid. You use a minimal amount to make the 20 IBU you need for the beer, and then see if you still have all that, jump. Oh, Bill, is this? Oh, this is you, Villanova. All right. So it must be you. My sauce was only 2.4. Yeah, dude. I was running some Hallertau. that was like 1.8, and you just have to use so much, right? But you want that character though, right? I mean, you want that character. So that's my hunch on this, dude. First of all, good on you for measuring all the way through the process. Good on you for measuring and calibrating, right? The other thing I didn't mention, which I don't think is an issue, but also make sure that you're taking your pH readings at the temperature that your pH probe is set for. But that's just the thought process portion of it. I'm sure with all the other stuff you're doing, you're doing that. But yeah, I think that's what's happening. I think you had so much green matter going in. I think you had so much hop going in that was pushing your pH back up. So, anyways, that's my gut on it, buddy. I would be interested for you to keep me in the loop on this. I'd be interested for you to keep me in the loop on this if you were to test something out and see that that's actually what's happening. So, no, Bill Nova, thank you. CT Homebrewing, do you see any benefit in having a separate mash lauter ton versus a single mash vessel with full recirculation? What are you talking about, home side or pro side, man? We're going to take the next question, and then I'll know whether it's home or pro, and I can answer that for you. Next question, not so much a question, but this is coming back. This is coming from a channel all-star. A channel all-star. Everybody wants to be him. Nobody can except him. He's Big Josh Halpert. Josh Toft, head brewer, Cartridge Brewing. If you didn't catch my charming conversation with Mr. Toft, Josh Toft, Big Josh Halpert, you need to go check it out. I apologize. We recorded it on location at Josh's place outside with the fire. There was tobacco. It was awesome. And the setup and everything, but my audio was bad. I thought it was reading through my mics. It wasn't. And we sound like we're in a fishbowl, but I would love it if you would go and listen to that and fight through the bad audio. If you are one of those people that hates bad audio, just go listen to it, because I just love Josh and I'm so proud of him. And I just enjoyed the conversation so much. And yeah, please do go listen to it. I think he's absolutely charming. He's smart. He's a good guy, and he's got some good stories to tell. And we just had a blast. So please go check that one out. But Josh has been doing something different at Cartridge because he has tools that we did not have before. So let's talk about how my purging process has changed since I got a Pentair Halfman's Oxy to go. So it's this purging thing that he got from Pentair, from old Sauce Boss up in Cleveland. I used to purge my bright tanks per the advice of the MBAA podcast, where they recommend a 5 psi flow of CO2 through a low port of the tank for a half hour for every 5 barrels of size of the tank. So if you have a 5-barrel tank, you would hook up to the bottom port, CO2, 5 psi, open up the CIP port arm at the top, and purge that for a half hour, and you're going to be there. These are all tips for people that don't have this equipment, right? When he did that, and we've been doing that religiously there for quite some time, the numbers he ended up getting off that process were between 600 and 800 parts per billion after a typical purge. Those numbers are huge. They're not good. You want to see 10 or under. Okay. He said, I never had a chance to test a full sub 10 part per billion purge with the old method, but I'm guessing it would take at least 3 hours, because now it takes me roughly 2 hours to get below 10 parts per billion, now running at 20 psi the entire time. So young Josh has modified practices over there, because he now has some better tools to work with. This NBA podcast that I listened to, we did exactly what they were saying, and I'm wondering if a couple of things are going on here. I'm wondering if, because I know people maybe don't like, you think, well, it's your beer, so you wouldn't really find fault in it. I think that our beer was, uh, we did a pretty good job with oxygen with beer. Um, I'm sure we could always do better. I don't think we had a huge issue with staling or anything like that. I mean, those beers have won medals and everything like that, and that's not to say, oh well, that means. But I mean, it doesn't hurt, right? And I know what oxidation tastes like, and I can be blind, but I feel like by and large we did a pretty good job. So what I think might be happening here is the reason why the beer wasn't garbage, which that's what it implies almost, that with a 600 to 800 parts per billion number, that the beer should be garbage. So the reason why I think that it wasn't garbage is we did that slow transfer. And one of the reasons they recommend the slow transfer in the podcast is it discusses that you kind of slowly build a full column of CO2 that slowly rises through the tank. Okay. Um, my guess is that as I was transferring the beer in relatively gently, that we were still evacuating out some of that additional O2 that was in the headspace. Um, yeah, I'm really curious to see how much longer it takes for it to close that out, that 600 to 800, because I have another buddy who was doing some purging, and he was saying that I think he was going slow and steady, and he was getting big numbers, and then boom, all of a sudden it just dropped. And that would support the argument that it's kind of gently from the bottom filling, not like swirling, but gently filling and creating a very dense CO2 almost cylinder going up through. Don't think it because it's not a solid, but kind of raising that atmosphere out. That might be kind of what we're looking at there. So I did want to touch base with you guys on that. And as Josh is able to mess around with a little bit more, I'll definitely keep you in the loop. But yes, he is using a Pentair Halfman's Oxy to go. So that might be an option. And yeah, something to check out. I might need to well, he had to amend some processes, but that's kind of the point here, guys, is that the stuff that I'm talking about, it's what I'm doing now with the equipment that I have now, right? And sometimes you just don't have access to different things. So keep your head down, keep working, do as much as you can with what you have. And when you can make those steps forward, awesome. Right. So anyways, thanks, Big Josh Alpert, for telling me about what you're doing over there with purging. CT Homebrewing, do you see any benefit in having a separate mash lauter ton versus a single vessel mash with full recirculation? He is talking about homebrew side, and so I'm going to keep it the homebrew side because I don't think there's a lot of pro side recirculation stuff going on. But I mean, for me at home, I don't think I would want two separate vessels. That's just kind of me for the mash and lauter. I would do that in one vessel. I mean, yeah, full recirculation. I don't know. I'm also not crazy about the idea of recirculation. I don't know. I mean, I did it. I used to do that. I used to run a Sabco, baby. I brewed on a Sabco for a while, and I used to recirculate that thing. I don't know. I don't know. This is not a good question. And Andy, when you edit this, you don't need to do to do this one because I got nothing good for you, brother, on that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not. I don't think so, man. I don't think so. Hey, Paul Bondi, man. Appreciate it, brother, with the super chat tip in there. Love it. Boom. Did I just give it a heart? Boom. I'm gonna do it again. I don't know. I have no idea what I'm doing in the chat. I'm just hitting the heart. Are you circulating or recirculating? Yeah, I mean I recirculate for Verloff, yeah. But not like circulating during the mash. Yeah. Next question comes from I am a brewery. Hey Adam. Hope you and your family are doing great. I appreciate that. They are doing well. Thanksgiving was good. I have a question. Since I have no personal experience at the moment, how do you use nitrogen in your stouts? How do you nitro your stouts? I am mostly concerned about carbonation levels and bottling. Plus, is there a microbial barrier as CO2 is providing to the end product? So I'm gonna approach it like this. I'm assuming you're talking about the pro side. So yeah. So the interesting thing is I've worked at one place that does nitro really well, and it was Gray Line in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Please go visit them. Nate Walser was always very good to me, and I'll always tell people to go on there. That there they make great beer. They make a great oatmeal stout there as well that they serve on nitro. And what you might not realize is sometimes people don't understand that coming out of the fermenter, your beer has CO2 in it, right? Especially if you're on the pro side and you have, sealable FVs and everything like that, and you can have some head pressure on them, you're probably going to have 1.2 volumes of CO2 in that beer right off the top. All right. That's really all the CO2 that you're going to need. What I have seen done in the past is I've seen those essentially half carbed beers kegged into kegs, and we have filled them on a scale, and so we would stop filling them early, okay, and we would leave a couple gallons of headspace in the keg, and then we would go ahead and take that keg, hook it up to nitrogen, and gas it up to, what was it, 20, 40, and then 60, and shaking it every time we gas it up further and further and further. And then we threw it in the cooler, and then we poured that through the draft system with like 50 or I think it was either 50, maybe it was 50 psi of just straight nitrogen on the beer. And that's how we serve those, and it worked really, really well. So yeah, I don't have any advice on the home side because I'm not super familiar with the equipment for that, and I have some concerns on safety. Now, just so you know, please make sure that you are only putting the amount of pressure on tanks that you are allowed to, for which it is rated for. So yes. So yes. What I'm just realizing is Paul Bondi, man, coming in with the super chat. He gave me $1.99 Australian. Bro, I don't even know how much that is. I might be able to retire. I don't know how the strength of the American dollar compared to international currencies. I'm loving this. Or is it like, let me think here. I don't know. I can't convert anything. But hey, listen, I appreciate it. Where are we at? Next one. Brad, did we already get to Brad? Are you gonna use okay. So we're gonna talk recipe a little bit right here, and I actually need my little thing. This is gonna be a Cliff Notes version of kind of how I would approach the some of the style things that I'm gonna be doing um, on the premium content. Again, so this is a really stripped down, quick version, mostly focused on the malt side of things. But here's Brad's question. We've been talking about some beer that he made. He made a Schwartz beer that was super easy drinking with 3470. He said, also, I accidentally added 8 ounces of chocolate malt instead of the quarter pound I wanted to. I ended up removing some of it by hand picking it out. It ended a bit too roasty for Schwartz beer, but it was still great. Is there anything that you would change? And so he's kind of asking me for a recipe breakdown here, or recipe advice. And so this is what my take is on it. So always when I'm going to be writing a new recipe, what I do is I will go to probably both style guidelines, probably both the Brewers Association and the BJCP, pull that style up, and I'm going to look at all the recipe parameters: ABV, IBU, what the range is, starting gravity, finishing gravity. Um, if you pull up the BJCP stuff, it'll give examples of the style. It'll give history on it, recommended ingredients, right? So you can do a lot right there. Okay. And this recipe that he sent me, I thought was pretty interesting. So for this Schwartz beer, and so a lot of times people talk about Schwartz beer as either black pills, right? Like a black lager, black pills, in particular, and you can you can also make versions of this beer that are a little bit more porter-like, but that's not really what we're talking about here. I want to do a little bit more true to style beer that's not quite robust porter, right? But more black pills. So the recipe that Brad was working with was 52%, and I'm gonna drop the tenths off of these. Was 52% Pilsen malt, 36% Munich 2, 5% Munich Cara Munich 1, 4.5% chocolate, and 2.5% Carafa 2. So when I look at recipes, the first thing I do is I kind of break them into big chunks. All right. I look at one, um, what percentage of base malt am I using? What percentage of caramel malt am I using? What percentage of roast malt am I using? So in this recipe, there's only about 5%. Uh, there's only about 5% caramel malt in this, which I think is great, which is fine. I don't think you want to be throwing a ton of caramel malt into a dark lager like this. He does have, between the combination 30, so that's 80, 88, 89% base malt between the Pilsen and the Munich. The Pilsen is going to kind of be your white bread, right? Right. And then the Munich is going to be a little bit of your bread crust. That's a way to layer up some malt character there. And then I also want to combine the roast malt numbers because I always look at these recipes by percentages. And so the Schwartz beer that he's brewing has 7% roast malt. And when we say 7% roast malt, we mean 7% actual husked roast malt. 7% is a fair amount. It's definitely going to get you the color that you want in a beer like this. And oh goodness, hey, I just have to say something. I've been thinking about this the entire time, and I can cut this. We can cut this out on when we edit this up, Andy. But I'm worried that I put my foot in my mouth. And Paul Bondi, you gave me a super chat, and that's awesome, and I'm incredibly grateful. And I hope I didn't like sound ungrateful when I was trying to be funny talking about it afterwards. It was me trying to make a joke about me not understanding like international currency, and then it was coming out of my mouth, thought it maybe made it sound like I wasn't being grateful, and that's like the furthest thing from the truth, and it's been killing me like the whole time I've been answering this question. So hopefully it didn't land like that, because I would never do that. That's this incredibly gracious of you. So anyways, if I missed, it was me missing at a joke, not me being an ass. So yeah, there you go, man. But back to the recipe part of it. So you have 7% real roasted malt in here, meaning that it's husked. I think that's going to get you a fair amount of roast character, and maybe more roast than you want for this style. Okay. And that was kind of one of the things that you were saying is you feel like the base beer might be a little too roasty, or the beer as you made it this time is a little too roasty. What I would encourage you to do is to take a little bit different approach. If I were going to be starting, what I would be doing with this beer, just kind of off the top, I would be looking at getting between like 85% Pils malt into it, 10 to 15% Munich malt into it, and then get my color from like a Carafa Special 3. You had talked about using Carafa 2. Carafa 2 is great, but it does have the husk on it, so it's going to give you color and roast astringency. Okay. But that Carafa Special 2, the huskless, it will give you more color with less roast intensity, less astringency. Okay. And that would give you a little bit more of the of a smooth roast character as opposed to an aggressive roast character. One of the things that I like to do when I'm looking at beers like this is, if you're looking at a recipe and saying, okay, so like 85% Pils, 10% Munich, and then the rest Carafa, I want to do a little bit more. You can layer things in. Okay. So I'm a fan of, first of all, I'm a fan of simple recipes. So don't be afraid of simple recipes. But if you do want to layer up a little bit, I don't have a problem with, folding in some different base malts, whether it be Pils, Vienna, Munich. You don't have to go over the top. You don't have to go crazy, but fold some different things in there, right? I would definitely, I would almost always suggest almost across the board, but go lighter with caramel malts in general. I think it's a pet peeve of mine, but getting that elevated level of residual sweetness in there can make it very tough. And yeah, the other thing that I would suggest too is, sometimes people will just say off the top with Schwarzbier, we'll go with all huskless. You don't have to do it like that. You can totally fold in some traditional roast malts as well. So don't hesitate on that. That would just kind of be my thoughts on that. Now, some of your options for that, you have Carafa Special, you have Midnight Wheat, which is huskless. You have Black Prince, which is huskless. There's others. Okay. So those are all things that you can be doing there. The other thing that I just want to mention, though, when we're talking about roast malts and beers, especially if you're looking for, if you're starting with a recipe or from someone else's point of view, something like that, always be referencing the actual color of those malts, because black malt from one place to another, roasted barley from one place to another, chocolate malt from one maltster to another, you can have wildly different color ranges. So just be really aware as you're going through that stuff. All right, hold on just 1 second. Okay, good. All right. Next question comes from Bondi Beach Beer. Paul, here you go, buddy. Hey, Adsy, you big old baby maker. What percentage of true loss do you expect for A, lagers, no dry hop, B, hoppy pales, and C, New England IPAs? I talked around to some different folks. You know, I have the kind of the loss numbers for what I look with, for what I work with, and for what some of my friends are doing, what some of my friends are seeing out there. What I'm seeing is typically I see about 10% loss on lagers, about 15% for pale ales, and about 30% for New Englands. Um, you know, obviously the variables here are hot volumes, what you're able to get out of your kettle in the first place into the FV, the amount that you're sucking up in your FV with dry hop and whatnot. So yeah, but I think that's a pretty good rule of thumb. If you know, the more hops, you know, if you're doing 8 pounds per barrel for your New England style IPA, then you know you're gonna have more loss. But my buddy who's doing New England style IPA, and he's probably doing a 4 pound per barrel dry hop. That's my guess. He's probably using some advanced hop product in the kettle to reduce green matter, to reduce loss. But yeah, so that's some pretty solid rules of thumb for that, man. And again, thank you so much for your super chat, brother. I appreciate it. I need to get another little sip here before I move on. Pittman on YouTube. Hi, Adam. I'm enjoying your channel. Pretty much. I think that's the way I'm reading it. So good content, which I can use for our teeny tiny brewery, which I run with my best friends beside our regular jobs. We always say, others go play tennis, we go into our brewery. That's awesome. I'm having two quick questions. One, what's the performance data of your keg washer pump? I'll jump in right there. I'm not sure. Especially now, we have this super awesome steam sanitizing one. I'm not certain, but I can answer the next part of your question. What kind of cleaning products do you use in your brewery? ISO, H2O2, caustic, non-caustic. So yeah, so let's kind of run down the list. So for cleaning tanks, we use a CIP caustic. Sometimes the CIP caustic will also have a beer stone remover in it, but either a straight caustic or a beer stone removing caustic, and a CIP acid. Okay. We have both of those for all of our cellar equipment. We also have peracetic acid that we use for sanitizing purposes in some fermenters and bright tanks. For spot sanitizing ports and whatnot, connections, gaskets, I've used both 70% isopropyl alcohol and flat out grain alcohol, which I'm using right now. I've also used a foaming acid and chlorinated cleaner. That foaming acid we will have in buckets, and we'll have like a little round-headed brush or like rounded brush, and that's we'll use we'll use chlorinated cleaner, rinse that off, scrub it with a little foaming acid, and then hit that with alcohol, and then get ready to make our connections. And then, as you heard me mention earlier, there is we also hit our floors with bleach as well daily. Bleach those up with a little bit of foaming agent, scrub them down, and then rinse it down, and you're on your way. So, yeah. Next question comes from Wizmuel on YouTube. So I'm wanting to have a career in biochemistry and want to know, should I go into a brewery? I really just want a rundown of pros and cons, but feel free to give me as much information as you want. I'm not your dad. It's one of my favorite closings to a question. I'm not your dad. Well, not my dad. Um, you know, if you want to go the biochemistry route, I think what you're looking at doing is I think you're looking at getting a lab position for a larger industrial type brewery. That would be just me. I think if you're looking to go with a smaller place, most places can't. Most people don't afford a lab guy. You could potentially do it yourself. You could have your own brewery and be able to do all your own lab stuff. I do think there's definitely career options there. Um, but I do think that it might be more likely to be able to be gainfully employed outside of the craft side of things. I'm not sure if that's what you're interested in or not, but it's possible. I think that that degree may bring you more money in other industries, but I am also not one to suggest that that money is the end in and of itself. So if it's something I would start jumping on. I'm not certain where you are located. I'm not sure if you are in the U.S., outside the U.S. But I would start. I would look at jobs and start seeing if that is job postings and see if what they're offering you or suggesting to you sounds pleasant. And that might be a good place to start making that decision from. So, yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Tapmaster at Oregon State Career Fair, uh, the A. Why can't I see all the question? This drives me crazy. The AB line was longer than any other company with bio and chemistry majors. Yeah, yeah, I believe that. I believe that. Yeah. Yeah, I don't have a ton of background with Sriracha, but Andrew might have some experience. If you're looking to pull some dill character, man, maybe you just actually use the real thing, right? Unless you want to have it all be with hops, you can actually do it. You know, you could actually spice that. Dill's all right. Not a huge. Yeah, dill's all right. I'm going with that. Dill's all right. I was about to be judgmental about dill, but now I think I'm gonna back off. I like it in dips. I like it in pickles. So yeah, I'm gonna give dill a break. Um, I'm still laughing about the fact that he said I'm not your dad. Uh, hold on just one second. I just gotta do this real quick. I'm actually I'm sending I'm sending Paul a DM. Maybe I'm just being crazy. But anyways, uh yeah. So next question comes from Drampa Man on YouTube. Can you please talk about imploding fermenters while cleaning? Yeah, man, I can. You know, basically, here's the most obvious statement: you don't want to be collapsing fermenters, imploding fermenters, or exploding them either way. But a lot of times people talk about imploding fermenters, and basically, it's a situation where in a lot of smaller tanks, it's harder, especially if you don't completely seal it. I know a lot of people will run a CIP with their ports open, right? and so there's room for if the tank wants to draw air in or push air out, it can out of those, whether it be through the door because the gasket is out and the door is just in place so the liquid can go around it, or out of the side ports, things like that. And so if you see me do like my CIP a tank tutorial when I was back at Cartridge, you can see that I always had those side ports open, stuff like that. So anytime you have like a big temperature change, you can be drawing in that tank, and it would be going from hot to cold, right? Yeah. So if you have a really hot tank and you start dumping a bunch of cold water through it, it can want to draw in and collapse. When you are potentially, if you are crashing a tank, and yeah, they usually have vacuum valves on something or whatever, or a vacuum valve on a tank, so it would draw air in before imploding. But that's good and all. But typically it's that drawing in. I know when a lot of times what I would like to do is when I would get my tank heated up, and then I would like to have my hot water circulating already, so I can make sure that there's no problem points in my tank. Like I'm not gonna, nothing's leaking and nothing's going to explode when I start spinning it. And then I would add the caustic while it was running through a side port. It would start drawing in. You could hear it sometimes start drawing in the air as that was happening. Some sort of chemical reaction happening right there that would want it to draw in. So I think that's the big one. You don't want to be taking tanks from hot to a ton of cold. Let them actually be open to the air. But when you start getting into really big fermenters, it doesn't really matter even if they're open, because you just have to be very, very careful. Some of the things that we do, like we have 120 barrel fermenters that don't have manway doors, like typical manway doors. They just have like the bottom hatch thing. And so we actually have a pump, a fan that actually attaches to the vent, and then we run that for a couple hours or whatever, and it pushes exterior air into atmosphere into the tank and flushes it out the bottom. So those are all things to consider as far as that goes. So Dratman, that is the deal there. Next question is from Cody DeBerry and Rain66 on YouTube. I'm putting these two together because they're so similar. What is the reason you would want to do a recirc in the fermenter? And then also, hi, Adam, I'm curious how your DO numbers look like after recirculating, even with a good pump. So we had some discussion in a prior video stream about recirculating a tank and what somebody was doing. And there were some people that was like, why would you ever recirculate a fermenter? Well, one reason you would recirculate a fermenter is you have dry hopped it and you want to speed up your extraction time or get more out of your hops and more extraction out of your dry hops. So that's a perfectly valid reason to do that. If your fermenter is sealed and under pressure with CO2, and you have good seals, good pump, you're probably getting good practice. You're going to be fine, right? Plenty of people do that, and it's I would say pretty standard in a lot of places. At least it's not unheard of. So that is one reason why you would want to do that. Also, people would recirculate a fermenter if you are adding something like biofine to it, right? That has to be well mixed prior to filtration or running through a centrifuge. So that's another reason, adding a fining agent that needs to be mixed. Also, if people are adding concentrates, various things to a fermenter, they could be doing that either in a fermenter and a bright. You would want to recirculate that to make sure that it's homogeneous. So those are some of the reasons that you would want to recirculate. And just how curious, the DO numbers from the places that I've been that have good equipment that do that stuff, there's not really pickup from what I can see. So yeah, that's the deal. Cody and Rain 66. Appreciate your questions. All right, so this one's interesting. Hold on a second. Okay. Okay. I did. I was still feeling bad about that thing about with Bondi. And so I sent him a message on Instagram to make sure that he wasn't mad at me. But I didn't offend him. Anyways, he said no. He actually has no idea because he's in and out of the stream. Again, he's on the other side of the world right now. Okay? The other side of the world. It's tomorrow. It's gonna be wild. Hey, you Aussies, is that offensive? Do you not like being called Aussies? Let me know. These are things I'm learning. But dude, I'm gonna have one of your people on, man. Next 2 weeks from now. It's gonna be the Aussie invasion. Adam makes beer. All up in that comment. Next question is from James on YouTube. Over the last couple of years, my post-mash gravity has been good or higher than calculated, with over 100% mash efficiency. But after sparging, my pre-boil gravity decreases to below what is estimated, and sometimes my OG is lower than estimated. I don't mash out and sparge with 170-degree water. If I get a great mash efficiency, why do I get such a lower brewhouse efficiency or OG? Well, first of all, you mentioned a couple of things. There's a couple of things that you're doing that are not maximizing. If you're not mashing out or raising the temperature of your mash in order to make that more viscous wort that you've just created, dense wort that you've just created, to increase or to decrease the viscosity of it, to make it run through and be drawn out more readily from the mash. Yeah, I mean, that's one area you could be losing. Not sparging with water that's, you could be sparging with water that's 170 for sure. And if you're sparging with cooler water for the same reason, you could be having some loss right there. But the big thing that you said up front, there's something that unless I'm just not understanding you can't get over 100% mash efficiency. Okay, there's something going on there, whether it be a measurement issue, a math issue, something might be wonky in the calculator and a setting that in the calculator that you're using. But I could be wrong, but I don't think you're getting 100% or over 100%. That doesn't jive. So you could have a couple of things going on. One, you're not getting over 100% because that's mathematically impossible. And I'm not trying to be sassy here. I'm just saying there's probably a calculation that needs to be tweaked in your calculator. Or there's a measuring issue going on somewhere. So yeah, that's kind of the idea. I would say just overall, if you're in a situation where you look at your first wort and your first wort is you just got tons of sugar out of it. You know what I mean? Like you got, tons, a lot of sugar out of it. It's really, really dense. Like it implies that maybe you could extract like 95%, right? And then you end up realizing after you sparge that your efficiency is like 80%. Okay. So that means you obviously left some behind. You went backwards somewhere. So a couple of things that you can do to help increase that. And we're probably just talking across the board on average strength beers. We're talking kind of average strength beers because your efficiency will go down as you do larger beers, as you increase the depth of that mash bed. That's just something that's going to happen. So yeah, I would say you might be wanting to get the temperature of that mash bed up. Make sure that you're not getting channeling. Make sure that you're getting appropriate flow through, because remember, you're just not trying to rip a whole a section of liquid through this mash, or just to get it through the vessel. You actually want it running equally throughout that entire cylinder of grain, right? So that all through the sides, through the middle, complete permeability. You want it to be completely permeated by that sparge water, right? And so you can look at that. Are we getting appropriate flow throughout the bed? That can be one area where you're losing, because if you have, let's just say that this is your mash bed, right? Or you just pull the cylinder of grain out of, and that's what it is. You might be running more water off of this side of the grain bed than over here, right? And so, because that's the path of least resistance, because you don't have a good bed, so you're going to have your water running down one side of your bed, so you're going to be just getting more just straight sparge water through, stuff like that. Okay. Those are some of the things that I would look at, and yeah, and I would recheck some of those calculations up front that you're doing. Because again, I'm not trying to be sassy or smart or anything, but you're not going to be pulling over what you can be with that 100%. But I appreciate the question. Next question comes from Michael on YouTube. My partner and I just bought a used Premier stainless system. It is a combination system which you mash into the kettle, pump over to the lauter tun, and back to the kettle. It's space saving, which works for us. I guess my question is, how much additional time per brew day with HLT brought to strike temp the night before? Appreciate all the information you put out in the world. Cheers. Well, first of all, thank you so much for listening, Michael. And it sounds like you're using the exact system that I was using over at Cartridge. And what I did is I had them cut a hole in the lauter tun, and I just turned it into a mashed lauter tun. All right, that's what I did. I avoided the decoction, because that's really what would be happening in that is, yeah, you can mash in and then pump over. I don't know, man. I think for the super majority of the stuff that you're making, you're just better off just mashing in directly into your lauter ton. I don't know. You can't do step mashes. You'd be able to do step mashes if you're in your kettle. There are definite, step mashing does have an impact on your final beer. But from a labor standpoint, and maybe I'm just lazy, from a labor standpoint, I feel like, just what I did. I think you're probably saving an hour a brew day. If I'm employed by a brewery to brew 150 times a year, and it's not like that, Paul. I appreciate it. I was trying to make a joke about me not understanding the difference in the money thing, and then I realized, I'm like, oh shit, I might sound like I'm saying that, oh, thanks for believe me. So yeah, this is you're getting to, you guys are getting to find out something about me, that I tend to feel bad about things when I think I do something dumb. So anyways, but yeah, so if it's an hour every day and you brew 150 times, that's a lot of time, man. That's almost 4 weeks of work at the end of the year. And I don't think it makes that much of a difference. Yeah, Rich, you're coming up, man. You're you're actually next question. So yeah. So yeah, man. I mean, I would just be mashing into the lauter ton. And it's pretty much a labor thing. You can probably fine point your beers a little bit differently by doing that. But yeah, I think I think I would rather not work the 140, 150 extra hours a year. But that's just me. So yeah, man, Michael, thank you for your question. Next question is from Lars on Facebook. On the cartridge system, it was hard to maintain temperature of the mash. Was it hard to maintain temperature of the mash on a single infusion? I just got some digital thermometers and I'm seeing a 10-degree drop over the course of the mash, Vorloff, and Sparge. Should I start at a higher temperature and let it drop? And you are seeing that you're getting some under attenuation with that as well. Yeah, I mean, you could raise up those temperatures and see what that does for you. Now, I had you send me some pictures, and you have some relatively thin-walled brewing equipment. You have like kind of like some super pots, right? And they do have like the insulation on them, like the aluminum bubble wrap around that. So a couple of things. Big picture is, especially when it's getting cold, as ambient is changing, and even your grain is getting colder through different portions of the year. There's a lot of different factors that go into your mash temperatures, holding your mash temperatures, stuff like that. So one thing that I have found is, if you are looking at this topic in general, is obviously you want to have your mash tun insulated as well as you can. I would say that it would be, if there's anything that you can do above or below that vessel to insulate it more, and on top, anything you can do would be great. The first piece of advice I gave was to open up the drain on the bottom of your mash tun / lauter tun, and run some HLT water through it to heat the whole vessel up. This might not work well for your equipment due to the way that it's constructed, but in some more robustly insulated tanks, I've seen that really help to level that out. So you just uniformly raise that up to, say, for instance, whatever, if you just preheat it with your strike water, 175 F for argument's sake. You heat that tank up every time, whether it's summer or winter, and it's a good way to normalize or equalize and be able to account for that, right? So preheating that ton may help. But you say that you do that and it doesn't quite work. Yeah, I mean, you can, if you feel, I would inch it up. I wouldn't go like a full 10 degrees. I wouldn't throw like a full 10 degrees on there or something like that. I'll go up a few degrees at a time and see if you can start mitigating that issue that you're seeing. I think that would be fine. But yeah, that would be my thoughts on it. So yeah. Anyhow, appreciate the question, Lars. Next question is from Matt Avila on Instagram. I recently received a bourbon barrel that was used for aging honey. I wanted to put a simple porter in it to age. Any tips or tricks on barrel aging? Also, what, in your opinion, is the best beer to barrel age? This is a 30-gallon oak barrel. Love your content, sir. It had bourbon in it, because I'd asked what spirit was in it. It had bourbon in it. Then a honey company got a hold of it and aged honey in it. It's been empty for 3 weeks. I was going to steam the inside of it to sanitize and add some moisture back to the barrel. First of all, I don't think you necessarily, if you want to steam it, that's fine. I don't think you necessarily need to. Honey has some interesting antiseptic properties to it. So I wouldn't want to lose the honey that's kind of embedded in there. Yeah, that's my thinking. Um, you don't necessarily want to steam all that out. I would look at pulling the bung, smelling that barrel, making sure that everything smells in place, and then purge, and then get your beer in there. Um, I've had a couple videos talking about that. So and there's actually one question from earlier in this live stream. Where I do a little bit deeper dive on that. But just a few notes here. We're not looking at a full-size bourbon barrel. We're looking at something that's 30 gallons, which is a little bit more than half of what a standard bourbon barrel is. So you're going to want to be looking at getting that beer out of there maybe sooner than you would if you were, filling a traditional size bourbon barrel. I would probably want to start tasting that barrel around month 4, depending on ultimately what you end up putting in it, and maybe not keeping it in there past 6 or 8 months, but that will be up to your palate. Just something to consider. I would also suggest when putting a beer in here, you say putting a simple porter in. There's a few things you can absolutely age moderate or modestly, modest gravity beers, modest alcohol beers. But I would encourage you to do something with a bit more oomph to it for multiple reasons. But yeah, I think in a situation like this, you don't want to be blowing out the base beer with a really large barrel component, and I think that's a danger that you can run. So if you have it in you to push that robust porter up a little bit, maybe into somewhere between a robust porter and maybe a baby imperial porter, push it up into that range. It might give that beer a bit more resiliency when it comes to aging in that barrel. So yeah, that's the direction I would take it. Many of you don't have access to it because it is. Some of you may not have access to it, I should say. But Julian Schrago from Beechwood Brewing has an amazing article that he did on the technical quarterly for MBAA a few years back, and I was just rereading it today, and it's just baller. So if you do have access to the MBAA database, check into it because it's a fantastic article. You could build your barrel aging program completely around this document. It's spectacular. Next question is from Aaron from email. Hello, Adam Makes Beer. A recent follower of your YouTube channel, and I do enjoy listening to your content. I've been wondering, 2-row versus 6-row barley. I don't see many recipes including 6-row and wanted to get your thoughts on adding 6-row to my beers. Do any of your beers use 6-row? Any recommendations or best practices when using 6-row? Just checking BSG pricing, which is one of the big pro side distributors. And 6-row is slightly more expensive by 1 cent. Price makes a difference, of course, but let's start milling. Thanks. Well, Aaron, here's my take on this. So we are talking about barley, and American grown barley, and we're talking 2-row and we're talking 6-row. So we've all seen that barley, kernel or stalk, and it has the little fruit off the top, the kernels, and then the additional little hairs that shoot off of them. So if we are talking 2-row and 6-row, this is really straightforward. If you look straight down at the top of that head of the barley stalk, I might be using some of those words wrong. So ag guys, don't get mad at me. Josh Halpert, don't get mad at me. When you look straight down on it, 2-row will have 2 rows, one on one side, one on the other of barley. Okay. 6-row, when you look at the top, will actually have 6 little heads or 6 little rows around in a circle looking at it from the top, and then they run down. Okay. So there's some just straight away morphological differences, and I think I'm using that word right. It's what I wrote down in my notes. I wrote, well, there's morphological differences. I believe that's like physical differences. Um, so one is that the 2-row kernel is larger compared to the 6-row, and you're fitting more. You're fitting 6-row. You're fitting more kernels into a smaller place, and so those kernels are smaller. All right, and now here's some of the things we're going to go through. Some of the high points of both 2-row and 6-row. 2-row tends to have higher extract, meaning it has more carbohydrate, or it is more plump. Okay, it has more starch inside of it. It has less husk compared to carbohydrate. Um, it is less grainy generally in the flavor, and that is because of the husk to carbohydrate ratio. It typically is lower in protein, and it tends to be smoother and have a fuller malt flavor than 6-row. 6-row is interesting because aside from the physical differences, it is higher in enzyme, okay, which makes it a good fit for some adjunct beers where you're going to be using a lot of rice or corn or dextrose, because let's exclude dextrose. Beers where you're going to be using a lot of rice or corn, and you're going to have carbohydrates from those that you want to break down, but they don't bring any enzymes to the table themselves. Okay, they're also higher in protein. And I'm not sure what the link is here, but the research that I was doing was also saying that they are more susceptible to DMS. I'm not certain why. So if somebody in the comments wants to reach out to me and let me know specifically, they implied that it had something to do with the increased volume of protein. So let me know. Let me know if you know anything beyond that. But when you start putting this all together, you start realizing that it has some use in light lager, right? Because light lager uses rice and corn. Rice and corn does not have enzyme, does not really have protein. I can't say specifically. I just don't want to throw that out completely. I think it's much lower in protein. I'm almost certain at the very least. And so it has this really high enzyme to help knock out the rice and corn starches. And it has higher protein to kind of balance out with the large amount of adjunct that you would be using and something like that. So I think that's a fine place for it. I personally still would just rather use 2-row. I have very, very little experience. I know Andy Gallagher from Linwood Brewing shamed me for making a classic American Pils without 6-row. But Andy can deal with it, dude. Andy's got a lot of rules, okay? Andy's got a lot of rules about beer, and he's just gonna have to live with it. But yeah, those are kind of the big picture takeaways between those two things. There is supposed to be like some flavor preference, smoother on the 2-row side. But if you want to mess around with it, I think especially in a heavily adjuncted lighter beer. If you're not super down with the lagers, that's fine. If you want to try it with like a lawnmower ale type beer, try something there. Get 30% corn and or rice in there. See what it does for you. I think that would be pretty interesting. Let me just take a look at a couple of things over here for the chat. Adam makes Aussies mad. Stop it. He's not mad. He's not mad. Paul Bondi. Hey, Adzi, you big old brew daddy. My CIP pump is not amazingly powerful. Is the purpose of the caustic CIP phase more for blasting off soil, or is it okay just for contact? Well, first of all, this is a great question. You're going to want to make sure that you are. It's got to be making contact with everything, man. From the top of that tank, and then it can shower down. What I would suggest is if you're in a situation where you don't have a CIP skid and you're putting hot water into a preheated fermenter, I would recommend like maybe running like a little bit of a sacrificial caustic cycle, so you get some water in there, not a full strength caustic blast. Maybe you could do a little bit less, and then run that for about 5 minutes, and that's going to take most of your soil out, and then dump that and give it a quick rinse, and then go back and run your full standard caustic cycle. If your caustic's super foamy and dark rolling around in there, you don't want to be doing that. You don't want to be doing that. You want to have your caustic look relatively good, so you can kind of use that little sacrificial caustic spin up front to take a good chunk of that out. You might also be able to get rid of a good amount of that with blasting a little bit with your burst blasting with some hot liquor tank water. That can also help with that. So just some options, dude. I appreciate the question. Patrick Sandy says, I like to make lower ABV brews. Any tips on building flavor with a smaller grain bill? I would look to some historical styles on this, man. And I would start taking tips from the Brits and think about their bitters, their milds, different things like that. They're low ABV beers. So first of all, I would actually look at carbing those beers lower because there's a purpose for it. Diminishing that carbonic acid in that beer is going to make it drink fuller, a touch sweeter, a bit rounder, right? Consider a warmer serving temperature, right? So I think a couple of those things can come into play. I do think it can be important to maybe look at some British yeast that will give you some ester character and maybe are a little bit higher glycerol producers. Something that can produce a little bit softer, rounder beer. Maybe you want to push up that chloride in your beer a little bit too on some of those smaller beers. What else? I think on small beer, I think you do want to use those beautiful British malts. I think there's a lot of nuance to them. And yeah, what else? There's maybe one other note that I wanted to put in there for you. Oh, and the other thing is sometimes small beers can get really lean. So think about maybe some non-traditional adjuncts or things like that. Think about oats, think about rye. If you don't want the flavor of rye, which to me rye malt is earthy, quite earthy, dirty kind of tasting. For me, flaked rye, you can use a lot of it and it doesn't come through in the way that malted rye does. I don't think I think you use a lot and with flaked rye, and get away with it. Try folding in 5% like flaked rye into some of these small beers, and I to me it's the most viscous of those flaked products. And I feel like you can just get a nice maybe get a nice softness, nice viscosity off of that. Help prop up those smaller beers a little bit. But that's going to be it to tell you guys. Listen, I mean, goodness, this was almost an hour 20, 2 hours 20, 2 hours 25 minutes almost. But once again, I said this was the Christmas, the Christmas version of the show. There was nothing festive going on here. I know holidays can be hard for people for a lot of different reasons. It can bring out loneliness. It can bring up time with family, which can be difficult and stressful and sometimes painful and sometimes beautiful as well. Don't get me wrong. But I know this can be a time of year where people can feel loneliness. So, as we go through December, reach out to the people that maybe you don't, I don't know, you think about, but you don't always hit them up. Reach out to the people that probably need somebody to say, hey, be good to your people, be good to your family. Remind yourself of the things that you're grateful for. I do have on the 15th, this is going to be a little bit later for me. So it'll be noon for him. It'll be 9 p.m. for me. We're going to get in here my man Hendo from Rockstar Brewing Academy. That's gonna be a good talk. Get me questions that you want to talk to him about. He does a lot of stuff on the consulting side. If you're thinking about going pro, we're gonna have a really good talk, man. He's a good dude. So thank you so much. We'll see you here in a couple weeks, and wish you all the best. Have a good night.